Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Yuni Marsela, Class 1B from English Education Department, UIN Syarif Hidayatullah, Jakarta. Here, I will review a novel entitled The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant. First, I will tell you that this book was written by Will Durant and Ariel Durant, country United States, language English, subject history and historiography, published in 1968 and publisher by Simon and Schuster. A review of the lessons of history by Will and Ariel Durant, husband and wife. This little gem is called The Lessons of History, and despite its uninspiring title, it's a real treasure of wisdom and perspective written by two of the more celebrated historians of the 20th century. The author wastes no words in their distillation and analysis of the sum total of recorded human experience. The lesson of history is suffused with a goodwill and an earnest love of knowledge and a sympathy for the human experience. I think anyone interested in questions involving the challenges of life or the social organization of human beings. The lesson of history is organized around 12 perspectives arranged as chapters, so we get history and biology history, character history, moral history, and socialism. And so on, some of the chapters are just a few pages. Obviously, this was intended to be a survey, and they admit at the beginning of their book to a multitude of doubts assailing their enterprise. I want to explain you this little passage because it gives a good indication of both the scope and intention of the book, since man is a moment in astronomical time, a transit grace of the earth, a spur of his species, a composite of body character and mind, a member of a family and a community, a believer or adopter of faith, a unit in the company, perhaps a citizen in a store or a soldier in army. It is impossible when you read this book not to compare episodes from the past with our own little moment in history. In the chapter Economics and History, the Durants write the experience of the past leaves little doubt that every economic system must sooner or later rely on some form of the profit motive to steer individuals and groups to productivity, and since practical ability differs from person to person, the majority of abilities is gathered in a minority of people. Concentration of wealth is a natural result of a difference in progressive society. The concentration may reach a point where the strength of number in the poor, who are many, rivals the strength of ability in the rich, who are few, the instability can reach a critical situation which history is diversely met by legislation redistributing wealth or by revolution distributing property. For example, in Athens in 1594, this is the historian Plutarch who writes this disparity between the rich and the poor had reached a crisis economy, a crisis moment, the status of the poor. Was that this matter the government was in the hands of their masters. The courts were corrupt and were deciding every issue against them, and consequently the city was filled with talk of violent revolt. The rich, who were angry at the challenge to their property, were prepared to defend themselves. By force in time good sense prevailed a businessman of aristocratic lineage. So long was elect, he did a number of things to ease back to the situation. He devalued the currency, thereby easing the burden on the debtor. He reduced all personal debts. He eliminated imprisonment for debt. He established a graduate tax that made the rich pay 12 times more than the poor. He organized the courts along a more popular basis, and he established a dictum whereby sons whose fathers had been killed in war for Athens were to be educated at the state's expense. The rich protest there is measure amount to an outright confiscation. Nonetheless, within a generation, pretty much everybody agreed that Solon had saved Athens from revolution. Good job. In a different chapter, Character and History, the Durants write that human nature has changed very little since the beginning of recorded history. The Greeks of Plato's time behave like the modern French, the ancient Romans like the modern English. So the human impulse don't differ according to class by and large. The poor have the same impulse as the rich, only with less opportunity. To realize them and nothing right, the Durance is clear in history. Then the adoption by successful rebels of the methods they were accustomed to condemn in the force they depose. Let's quote the one that may be helpful in this very moment of unparalleled division between the liberal and conservative perspective at play in citizenry, discussing the reflexive role individuals play in historical formation. The Durance right intellect is therefore a vital force in history, but it can also be a destructive power of every 100 new ideas. 99 or more will probably be inferior to the traditional response which they propose to replace. No one person, however brilliant or well, can come in one lifetime to such a fullness of understanding as to safely judge and dismiss the customs or institution of his society. For this are the wisdom of generations, of the centuries of experience in the liberty of history. So the conservative who resist change is valuable as the radical who propose it perhaps more valuable, as in plants where roots are more vital than grass. It is good that new ideas should be heard for the sake of the few that can be used to, but it's also good that new ideas should be compelled to go through the mill of objection opposition. What value do we give history? A lot of us stop studying history once we leave school, but there is a lot of lessons that can be learned from history. At only 100 pages, this book summarizes a 10-part series written by the author to summarize key concepts such as biology, character, and economics through the lens of history. Although the language is difficult at times, this book gives a wonderful insight into the value that history gives and why we need to study it more. The book emphasizes the power of the individual. It is each one of our responsibility to educate ourselves and to understand history in more depth in order to understand what's come before us, what's happening presently, and how we can go into the future. This book is ideal for anyone who's looking for a short introduction into the value of history. If that's you, then I definitely recommend reading this book. So this is my review. Thank you for everyone. Sorry for my mistake. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.